What's up, everybody? This is Damron with Trash Ass Gamers, bringing you another Elder Scrolls Online Veteran Dungeon Guide. This is for Imperial City Prison, which is part of the Imperial City DLC. Actually, one of my favorite dungeons in the game. I love the look of this, kind of this Cold Harbor, Dremora feel to it. Super fun dungeon to run, in my opinion. It is a little on the longer side. You got to traverse a long distance, but really fun. I really enjoy this. So if you haven't seen one of my guides, I like to keep these videos complete. I will show you the entire dungeon. I'll try to fast forward through the ads as we're moving forward, but I want to make sure everyone knows exactly where we are and exactly how we got there. So these will be complete, and we'll focus mainly on boss strategies or anything in the dungeon that I think is important as we move through. So just up here is our first boss of the dungeon. Not too bad. Overfiend. It doesn't really matter where you want to keep this boss. Some people try to pull into the back area of the arena, but it doesn't really matter. So he's going to do this AoE around him that's kind of a half AoE. Actually, the center part of that AoE doesn't cause damage. So if you are a melee, you can just stay close up to him. And if the tank is holding the aggro, his little flurry attack that he does that kind of gives a conical distribution will kind of stay away from you. Now about halfway through the fight, a harvester will spawn. And as long as Overfiend is up, ads will be spawning in as well. So make sure you do not get disfocused, or unfocused I should say, by the harvester. Maintain your focus on the Overfiend and finish him off so that the ads stop pouring in. And once that happens, then you can finish up the harvester and the ads and then move on to the next area. And in fact, when you kill the Overfiend, people that die, if they do die, will be able to respawn. So make sure you just focus on him, and then we'll clean up the ads, and then we'll push through a good bit of ads, and I'll see you at the next boss.
The Flesh Sculptor is your next target. Go! His laboratory is just up ahead.
Now I do want to point out, as we move up to our first watcher up here, there is an in-game achievement to beat this entire dungeon without being spotted by one of the vigilant watchers, and there's not too many of them to get past. And there's a couple ways you can do that. One, you can crouch, and they have a maintained path so you can avoid them, or you can use invisibility pots if you want to get that. So our next boss, Abomination the Flesh Sculptor. This boss can give people a little bit of trouble if you kind of don't understand what's going on. So a few things that we want to be aware of, and that one is that central pool. And if you notice, there were people that went in there and kind of died, and then they became this Flesh Atronach. So that's something to keep in mind as we come up to the portion of the fight on how that occurs. And what happens is these inmates kind of walk towards that pool, and if they get there, then they will dissolve into it, and then if enough of them dissolve into it, they will form a Flesh Atronach. The way to stop that are these little boils that are on the ground, and you're going to use your synergy to throw that at the group of enemies, and if you hit them, they will die before they get to the pond. I guess it's a pond, in order to spawn the Flesh Sculpture. Now that will explode where your aimer is, so if you're having trouble aiming that, they're going to go to where your aimer is. Now, don't focus too much on trying to stop all of them. The boss will go into an invincible phase 3 times at which the inmates are coming in, but as soon as she comes out of that phase, get to damaging the boss again. The Flesh Atronachs can stack up. There shouldn't be too many of them if you were doing your job when the inmates were walking to the pond, and you can finish off the couple that do spawn in as you're finishing the boss, and then essentially by the time those Atronachs die, you're going into the next phase of killing these inmates. So that's really a good strategy to maintain while you're doing this fight. For the boss tax itself, she will target an enemy, and if you know, that enemy can be on the, or your ally can be on the ground, and if you don't bash her, she will kill your ally. So be aware of that attack. Other than that, the tank will be able to hold on to her pretty easy. Her melee attacks don't cause too much damage. The healer is going to be able to heal you through that just fine. But as you can see, I'm not really worried about those inmates once she comes out of the invincible phase. I'm fine with the Atronach spawning because I have enough damage that I can kill the Atronachs as I'm getting her to her next invincible phase. And in fact, on her final phase, I'm not going to worry about the Atronachs at all because she'll be in an execute type percentage of health and we can just finish her off. So that's what we're going to do. And you know, finish her off as well when you're playing and bash through the next set of ads, and we'll meet you at the next boss. Now, I will say I've seen a lot of people just kind of run to the end of this area because, again, it is kind of a long area to traverse and there's quite a bit of ads. So sometimes people will just kind of run to the end of this area and then let the ads kill the whole group to sort of reset. I'm kind of a no survivors kind of guy, so I like to just kill everything. You know, I don't skip things too often, but if I do, you know, it's because the whole group really says, you know, let's just get moving. And it's a really good way to tackle this particular dungeon if you're trying to go for the speed run, because killing all the enemies and getting the speed run at the same time in this dungeon is kind of difficult. So if you are trying to get the under 30-minute run, just, you know, run past all this stuff, and basically you can die at the very end and they'll all reset and run back to their spawns, and then you all respawn together to just kind of run past it. And that's, you know, again, if you just want to speed it up. Of course, my batteries died here, which is always fun. I'm rushing to get my batteries back in my controller as my squad is fighting for their lives. Alright, so the next boss coming up here, I want to say that if you all run into this area, someone can get locked behind the gate. But anyway, this is basically a large watcher, and around the arena is this basically poison water. You can't stand in that or you will take continuous damage. And then on the inner land portion, you have these Zivkin necromancers, and then they will actually spawn in skeletons throughout the fight, which you can interrupt. Whenever they start charging up, you can just bash them and interrupt the skeletons from coming in. So I like to kind of kill at least 3 or 4 of them, and then you can really focus the rest of your attention on the boss. You actually don't need to kill all of them, but we kill all of them here. It does make it a little bit easier. then you can just focus on the main boss and not worry about any skeletons spawning in. So once you take care of them, the attention can just be solely focused on this large Gravelight Sentry, who doesn't really do too many attacks you got to worry about. That spinning attack will launch you back, and sometimes it'll launch you into that poison water. And if you're low health in that situation, you know that can be a grave situation. And then her attack where she shoots the lasers out of her eyes, it's pretty easy to avoid that, but if you're standing directly in that, that can certainly do some damage as well, so be aware of that. And then she'll have these little AoEs that kind of blow up out of the ground with these little tiny horvers. Just stay out of that, even though they don't really do that much damage, but just stay out, and you'll avoid all the damage altogether. Alright, next up is the Flesh Abomination, which is basically a huge flesh Atronach. He's not, as big as he looks and as scary as he looks. He's pretty easy for a boss. You can kind of just hold him to this gate over here, and that'll make your life easier for the tank. And throughout the fight, you're going to see these horvers spawn in, and as long as they're on the map, they're going to create some poison AoEs on the ground that can do heavy damage if you're inside of that. And you really need to avoid standing in that, or you can die very, very fast. So make sure you deal with them first and foremost, and once you get them off the board, then we can really focus our attention on the boss. And as you can see, he's already down to 69% because we want to lay AoEs on him as we're taking out the horvers. And eventually he will put his hands in the ground and put an AoE around all the players. And you don't want your AoEs to cross each other. You want to kind of spread out when that happens. If your AoEs are crossing, that's going to basically make the damage multiply. And if you have too much crossing past, that can kill you. And also while his hands are in the ground, as you see on the left side of the screen, there's a circular AoE that shoots poison up. And if you cross that or in that, that will probably kill you very, very fast. You saw me roll through it in the beginning of that spawn, and I almost died. So anyway, after he does that, he will do a slam and kind of dissipate everything that's on the board. Now, considering how his health is and how weak he is, you'll probably only have to do one phase of that. So just execute him after that, and we'll move on. Alright, I do want to show you something on this next group of ads. I believe that's important. So you have the Lord Warden's Templar and you have a Necromancer. You really want to kill the Necromancer first, and I'm purposefully not doing that because I want to show you what happens if you don't. So the Necromancer, if you don't kill him quick enough, what he's going to do is he's going to spawn this root-like thing, and it basically protects everybody. The Bone Surge Totem, that's what it's called. And then you'll have to kill that before you can really do damage to everybody else. So you see my damage to everybody else is in the hundreds. So that Bone Surge Totem is something that you can actually avoid being spawned if you focus on the Lord Warden's Necromancer right from the get-go and kill him before he spawns that. It's just going to shorten the fight for you if you focus on him first, then take out the rest of the enemies.
The warden is your final obstacle. You'll find him ahead.
Lord War found some battle resistance, but you won't be spinning down the water of those
Alright, so here we are. Let's destroy the Warden's Tomb to play hard mode. We get a little tripped up in the beginning of this fight. I'm trying to focus on showing you the mechanics. But overall, it's really not too bad if you kind of understand everything that's going on. So the final boss, here he is, the Lord Warden Dusk. And there's a few things you really need to know about this fight. One, he's going to spawn these purple balls throughout the arena that what they're going to do is they're going to tether you if you stand close to it, and they'll do kind of a slow damage to you, which I'll show right here. They tether you, they damage you, and you're slowed down a little bit when you are tethered. So as he spawns those, and he will spawn more and more, you want to stay away. Now the tank will generally hold aggro of Lord Warden Dusk, and you won't have to worry about his kind of machine gun pulse attack that he does, but if that does start aiming at you, you're going to need to roll dodge, or that will probably kill you if you're a DPS. Now the other thing you see is these pools kind of going around the room. There's 2 of them, and there's 4 players, which means when he goes up into the air like he is now, and I'm going to show you what happens if you miss it, you're going to die. When he goes up into the air, 2 players and a maximum of 2 players can go into each portal. If one person goes into a portal prior to him doing that by accident, then that portal will only have 1 remaining teleportation available. So if someone accidentally goes into one of those prior to that attack, that's a guaranteed death for somebody. So don't go into those until he goes up in the air. And when he goes up in the air, 2 people per portal, and it'll put you up in the air, which I'll show you later in the fight. And then 2 times throughout the fight, he will disappear and he will spawn his shade forms, and the shade forms aren't really that tough. They don't have much health, but he's got these tethers laid around the map that, you know, can cause problems while you're trying to attack them. And only one of the shades can take damage at any given particular time. So keep that in mind. So you want to basically take your time, kill the shades, and they're pretty good to get your resources back as well. You can get down to like 1 shade left and kind of heavy attack it down if you are into a resources needed situation. So finish them off, and that's basically the mechanics for the whole fight. So you're going to see later, well, I get whipped there. You're going to see later whenever I do go into one of the portals, it'll kind of put you up above the middle of the map. And when that happens, you need to press your synergy, you know, Y and B at the same time prior to hitting to the ground to brace your fall, or the fall will kill you. So keep that in mind whenever you do teleport up. And you saw that guy who was trying to revive me, and he ended up getting sucked into the portal. That means the next time he does his attack that requires the portals, like, someone's definitely going to die because there's not enough portal transports available. So just remember that. There's only 2 available per portal spawn, and only 2 people can go in at a time, and you want to save that for when he's in the air. Other than that, that's the general mechanics. So we'll kind of finish this boss up. I think we'll smoothen it up here. It was a little rocky in the beginning, showing you guys some of the mechanics, but once we get everybody up and moving, we'll finish this fight off, and we'll talk about the monster set at the end.
Let shadows slay the meat from your bones! This pain will open your soul! Ah! beneath me. My shadows will contend with you. What did Liron promise you? I ain't that rich. Now no spoils here but death. The bad deserve their fate. Their souls will serve thee unendingly.
Alright, another Lord Warden Dusk bites the dust, so we're done with that dungeon. Great dungeon. Really enjoy that. I hope you guys did too. It's really one of my favorite dungeons in the entire game. Has some great fights in it. Love the aesthetics and the kind of cold harbor look to the whole dungeon. It's super fun. So the monster set that comes out of here is the Lord Warden Dust set, and which I'll show you right here. Um, so it's actually not too bad of a monster set, but not a lot of people use it. The first part of the set's going to give you spell and physical resistance, and the second part is when you take damage, you have a 50% chance to summon a shadow orb that increases the physical and spell resistance of every one of your allies within 8 meters. So it's pretty decent, I guess, for a tank type set, but I don't see too many people using it, honestly. I personally don't have a tank. So anyway, I hope this helped you. If it did, feel free to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.